As we speak, Donald Trump is taking questions from reporters at the White House, and predictably, he's lying his ass off and answering questions stupidly rather than substantively. But at one point, Trump seemingly publicly walked back his entire immigration policy as it's currently being executed, controversially to say the least, by White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller. The entire thing which predicated the protests in Los Angeles. Donald Trump is at war with his own White House, and he's also being publicly heckled about it online. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we have several clips to play from this ongoing de facto presser, but I want to start with the biggest single piece of news, which is this right here.
Peter?
Thank you, President Trump. I have two. First, on immigration. What made you change your mind about targeting in California farmers and people in the hotel and leisure business?
Well, we're not targeting. In fact, if you look today, I put out a statement today about farmers. Our farmers are being hurt badly by, they have very good workers. They've worked for them for 20 years. They're not citizens, but they've turned out to be, great. And we're going to have to do something about that. We can't take farmers and take all their people and send them back because they don't have maybe what they're supposed to have, maybe not. And you know what's going to happen and what is happening? They get rid of some of the people because, you go into a farm and you look and people they've been there for 20, 25 years and they've worked great and the owner of the farm loves them and everything else. And then you're supposed to throw them out. And you know what happens? They end up hiring the people, the criminals that have come in, the murderers from prisons and everything else. So we're going to have an order on that pretty soon, I think. We can't do that to our farmers. And leisure, too, hotels. We're going to have to use a lot of common sense on that.
And my other question about...
So that's Donald Trump. That's Fox News' Peter Doocy asking the question, calling Trump out. Well, you changed your mind on this. And it is indeed a mind change, and it's because the polls are brutal for Trump on this particular issue. We've got other clips to play, but just to give you a context for the reaction, unreal. Trump roasted for mixed message on deportations and farmers needing migrant workers. Trump sparked a wave of backlash on Thursday with an eyebrow-raising post on Truth Social that both sought to reassure the hotel and agricultural industries that they won't lose their migrant workers and also promised to keep up deportations. Quote, our great farmers and people in the hotel and leisure business have been stating that our very aggressive policy on immigration is taking very good, long-time workers away from them with those jobs being almost impossible to replace, Trump began. He added, in many cases, the criminals allowed into our country by the very stupid Biden open borders policy are applying for those jobs. This is not good. We must protect our farmers, but get the criminals out of the USA. Changes are coming, okay? So he's walking it back, folks, and he's trying to walk a tightrope and provide a mixed message, but this signals, at least rhetorically, a retreat. Will policy follow? It remains to be seen. There's almost always a disconnect between the shit that leaves Trump's mouth and the reality on the ground. But again, he's being roasted for it, and rightly so. As Governor Gavin Newsome of California points out, turns out chasing hardworking people through ranches and farms and snatching women and children off the streets is not good policy. Trump's oddly phrased statement was also quickly dragged by pundits and journalists. Quote, that feeling when you've realized you started deporting your own cheap labor, replied the Bulwark's Sonny Bunch. Veteran economic journalist James Soroki added, quote, amazing. Even Donald Trump thinks Stephen Miller's deport them all and let God sort them out strategy makes no sense. The Washington Post, Catherine Rampell, of whom we are a huge fan. Catherine Rampell and Jessica Tarlov, Pondering Politics is basically the unofficial fan club of both. She said, Trump should have a chat with Shadow President Stephen Miller, who explicitly ordered ICE to start rounding up non-criminals at farms and Home Depot parking lots. Below are some reactions to Trump's post. What's there even to say at this point? Richard Hanania, a conservative commentator, says, ha, 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 this man cracks me up. Benji Sarlin, every so often he talks to someone in business or tech and accidentally endorses comprehensive immigration reform and then never does anything about it. Again, James Soroki, amazing. Even Trump thinks Stephen Miller's deport them all and let God sort them out strategy makes no sense. Sonny Bunch, whose comment we already read. Spencer Hakeman, breaking news. The guy that spent the first 70 years of his life in construction, hospitality, and entertainment accidentally finds out that our entire labor force runs off of illegal immigration. Oops. Sam Stein of the Bulwark says, unreal. Catherine Rampell, again, talking about Stephen Miller. Yes, this is huge. This is a public repudiation and contradiction, at least in rhetoric, of Stephen Miller's entire approach, because the Wall Street Journal, the conservative Wall Street Journal, broke a story a few days ago about how Stephen Miller, maybe it was a week ago, about how Stephen Miller, Deputy White House Chief of Staff, summoned ICE leaders to the White House and berated them. Why are you only focusing on criminals? These numbers are down. We need to get them up and up and up. We need to match the Biden deportation numbers because they are woefully off track if that's the goal. Stephen Miller is prioritizing raw numbers over criminals and criminality. And this is part of the reason that Trump's polling on this issue is plummeting. Okay, we'll get into that in a separate video. So having now explained that particular snafu, let's get to some of the other comments that he made at this gathering.
But he knows. Los Angeles would be right now burning to the ground, just like the house is burned to the ground. It's so sad what's going on in Los Angeles. Think of it. They had a fire that should have never had because they should have listened to me in the water. Eventually, we broke in and we had the water come down from the Pacific Northwest. I could show you pictures now with the half pipes, the big half pipes coming all.
So Trump's lying his ass off. He ordered the release of water gathered in major reservoirs, and all he did was effectively waste the water because that water never made its way to Los Angeles, which is where the epicenter of the fires were. It never made it there. It just, it was just absorbed into the ground in the opposite direction. He doesn't know what he's doing. He just objectively isn't. He's a moron of the highest order. Here's another clip.
On my first day in office, I ended the Green New Scam and abolished the EV mandate at the federal level. We abolished it, which is basically that everybody will be driving an electric car within a very short period of time. Now I know why Elon doesn't like me so much, which he does, actually. He does. And he never had a problem. It's very interesting. This is not something.
So, comment there about Elon Musk, who has groveled publicly for Trump's forgiveness, apologizing for some. He says he regrets some of the comments he made about Donald Trump. He didn't specify what those comments are, but it is very clear that Elon Musk is waving the white flag. He is tapping out. He is begging for mercy and forgiveness and to be brought back into the fold. Perhaps Trump will. Perhaps Trump won't. They're both very cynical operators. Here's another clip of Donald Trump ranting about Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, who runs monetary policy in the United States, about interest rates.
Because we have inflation under control perfectly. You probably saw the records. Everyone's on television saying, what's going on here? Trump has proven to be right. All of these things. We've taken in $88 billion in tariffs in 2 months. $88 billion with no inflation. And if we're smart, there won't be. Now, we'd like to get this guy to lower interest rates. Because, if he doesn't, we have to pay. We have a lot of short-term debt. Obama gave it to us originally, and Biden carried it on. They like short-term. I like long-term cheap debt. But a lot of the debt comes through because Biden, he didn't do it. I'm sure he didn't know anything about it. But somebody approved short-term debt. It's all over the place. And it comes due starting very soon. And if we would lower the interest rates by 1 point, we'd pay about 1 point less. That's $300 billion a year. Can you believe it? 1 point. If he'd lower it by 2 points, we'd pay $600 billion a year less. That's for years, 10 years, 12 years, whatever we make it. But we can't get this guy to do it. And the fake news is saying, if you fired him, it would be so bad. It would be so bad. I don't know why it would be so bad, but I'm not going to fire him. I just want him to, we call him Too Late, right? Too Late is his nickname, like Too Tall Jones. He was too tall, T-O-O. And I just say this because we want to get rid of inflation, and we have. But we're going to be paying more for debt. And all he has to do is lower it. Europe's done 10.
So this is him once again ranting about Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, whom he appointed to that position in the first place. It is true that the recent inflation reports from like the last week or so have been surprisingly optimistic, but also it just potentially signals that the delayed consequences of Trump's tariffs will be felt later. We still don't know. It's an incomplete picture. He's welcome to try to tout that as a measure of success, But what happens if the next report shows that inflation as a consequence of Trump's delayed tariffs is skyrocketing? This is why Chairman Jerome Powell is not lowering interest rates, because he's like, hey, asshole, I'd love to, but you keep putting the economy in a situation where I can't in good faith do it. Again, Donald Trump's own making, he's being hoisted by his own petard, and it explains why his polling on the economy is disastrous. Here's another clip.
All read. But now you have to, I always got along with Gavin. I like Gavin. I've liked him, always. He said I never called him. You know, they asked him a question on Fox, I guess. I never spoke to him. He doesn't remember the call. He doesn't remember. I never spoke. And then I produced a phone call. I had it. It took me about 2 minutes. I said, well, here's the call. It lasted 16 minutes and 4 seconds. And it was at 12:30 in the evening. I actually made a call, didn't pick up. I called him a second time, and he picked up. And I told him, I said, you have to get your ass in gear.
So again, this is Trump going back to his lie. So on June 10th, Trump was asked by reporters, we've done so many videos about this, you probably know it by now. On June 10th, Trump was asked by reporters, when was the last time you talked to Gavin Newsom? He said a day ago, which would have been June 9th, okay? Gavin Newsom says there was no call. There was not even a voicemail. Donald Trump responds by sending a screenshot of a call log to Fox News. And Fox News and Trump are like, ha ha, you're a damn liar. Gavin Newsom, you lied your ass off. We have a call log which proves that Donald Trump called Gavin Newsom. Except the date said June 7th. Gavin Newsom never claimed that Donald Trump has never called him. As a matter of fact, Gavin Newsom is on the record. We have clips of him in an interview where he acknowledged the June 7th phone call on June 8th or 9th. People asked him, so did you talk to Donald Trump? And he's like, yeah, Trump is nuts, and blah, 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 blah. He was responding to Trump's claim that there was a June 9th phone call, which there wasn't. So Trump was wrong. Fox was wrong. They have egg on their face. And actually, as a matter of fact, as we discussed in a previous video, they got busted deceptively editing a video to try to cover for Trump's ass while accusing Governor Newsom of being a liar. Pretty pathetic, pretty dishonest, but that's Fox News and that's Donald Trump for you. Here's another clip.
I said, you have to get your ass in gear because you're going to have a problem there. And he would have. If we didn't bring the military in, you would have right now something. And I went through it because I follow the rules 100%. And I watched in Minnesota, where you have the man who ran for vice president of the United States. Fortunately, he was a disaster. But he wouldn't call in the National Guard. And I eventually called in the National Guard, but it was seven days late. I said, I'll never do that again. I'm never going to, if I see problems brewing, if they're not going to do the problem.
So you may or may not recall, but we actually did a video about, he's referring to Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota. Donald Trump, we have the leaked audio of this, and we did a video about this months ago, but Trump actually praised Governor Walz in a phone call with the governors. Like it's a matter of now public record. He praised Walz for his response to the riots which occurred in 2020. Number one, so again, Trump was either lying there or lying now. Either way, he's a liar and therefore morally inferior. But this idea that, oh, we got to send in the military, it's really, really stupid, okay? The military is not supposed to engage in domestic law enforcement. Now, the National Guard, on the other hand, has a bit of a hybrid role. It's more permissible than, say, the 700 active duty Marines that Trump sent into Los Angeles, which is really, really stupid and unnecessarily escalatory. But even the National Guard. You bring in the National Guard when local and state authorities need you to bring in the National Guard, and then they can actually just have the governor do it, because the National Guard operates under dual command. The governor typically is in charge of the National Guard, but under certain circumstances, the president can indeed federalize the National Guard and assume control. But Trump skipped all those steps just to flex on California, and it's delivered no material benefit and has only served to escalate things. Here's another clip.
We rebuilt the military. We have the greatest, strongest military. We defeated ISIS. We defeated ISIS. We defeated ISIS in 4 weeks. It was told to be 5 years. It was going to take 5 years, anywhere from 4 to 5 years. We did it in 4 weeks with, by the way, headed by the general who's now the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. That's why he's there. he said it would take 4 weeks, and he did it in 4 weeks. He did actually a little bit faster. So we have a great country, and we're going to keep it that way. And when it comes to Los Angeles or other cities, if we see other cities are gearing up, and these people are agitators, they're paid, they're professionals, they're insurrectionists, they're troublemakers, they're all of those things. But I believe they're paid, and we're going to find out through Pam Bondi and her.
No evidence that they've been paid. He's just making this accusation. This is the problem. It's not, listen, if you got evidence, bring the evidence. But he's got none. He's just making an assumption. So, also, Donald Trump tried to take credit for a curfew that was issued by Mayor Bass in Los Angeles. Had nothing to do with Donald Trump. That helped maintain a level of peace by, again, a state-enforced curfew that he had nothing to do with. He tried to take credit for it.
If we didn't go, Los Angeles right now would be on fire. It would be a disaster. And we stopped it. And last night was very good. Nobody showed up. You know why they didn't show up? Because we were there. If it was just the police, because the police are great. I know those police, they're great, but they're told not to do anything. They're not allowed to act. Thank you.
No, there was a curfew. No evidence that the National Guard and the Marines that Donald Trump deployed provided any sort of, major deterrent in that respect. So again, he tries to have his cake and eat it too. This question is particularly interesting because Trump is asked about the upcoming No Kings protest for his big boy birthday parade, his military parade on Saturday, which again is super gross, super authoritarian, unconstitutional, un-American, classic Trump.
There are several No Kings protests planned across the country on Saturday as well. What are your thoughts on those?
What do they call? No king?
No Kings.
I don't feel like a king. I have to go through hell to get stuff approved. A king would say, I'm not going to get this. A king would have never had the California mandate to even be talking to him. He wouldn't have to call up Mike Johnson and Thune and say, fellas, you got to pull this off, and after years we get it done. No, we're not a king. We're not a king at all. Thank you very much.
Problem is that he behaves in ways that run contrary to that assertion. He retweets photos of himself as a king. He revels in the notion of absolute presidential immunity. He just dispenses with the notion of states' rights whenever it's convenient for him. So Donald Trump is indeed trying to act like a king as much as humanly possible, and we will talk about the No Kings protest in a subsequent video today. But there you have it. Donald Trump publicly walking back basically his entire immigration policy, or at least what it's become, undercutting Deputy White House Chief of Staff Stephen Miller, and ultimately basically torpedoing the predicate that created the Los Angeles protests in the first place. This is a mess that Donald Trump created, and he seems to be panicking and walking away from it, which means he's probably seen the polling on it. There you have it. Let me know what you think in the comments.